if that's it. So, hi everyone. My name is Ana Maria and this is Raresh, and together we form New Mindflow. That's how we go in the digital space most of the time. We are here to present the Dapps products and integrations challenge setting. The main question, the guiding question for this challenge setting is what new Dapps products and integrations can be implemented to bring impactful use cases to the Cardano ecosystem that will drive more adoption. For this challenge setting, we have a total amount of $7,850,000 in ADA, which is the total amount between the two challenge setting proposals from Fund 8, Dapps products and integrations and products and integrations. They have been merged and together they form this amount. Another guiding principle is that Cardano needs innovations for the ecosystem to reach its potential and offer alternatives to existing centralized systems. More on the challenge you can find on the link on this slide, the challenge on idea scale link, and other relevant information and Fund 9 dates and information you can find on the second link. As for the challenge team, if you have any questions or feedback or comments, or if you need guidance, you can find us on Telegram on a dedicated channel for Dapps and integrations. Of course, also in the Catalyst Discord server with the dedicated channel for Dapps products and integrations. Other informations you can find in the Catalyst announcements Telegram channel, and there's always the Catalyst proposals Telegram channel that where you can find other proposers that you can share ideas with.
So before I move into more details about this challenge, I would like to add the fact that regarding the budget, it hasn't been exactly clarified. And if someone in the room maybe has more information about this, feel free to jump in and offer that information. But for Fund 9, there will be a change in the accounting for Project Catalyst overall. So we will be moving from dollar-denominated amount to an ADA-denominated amount, whichever is lowest. So either $16 million or 16 million ADA, depending on the market, and whichever is lowest. So that dollar amount may be an ADA amount if it's if the market still has ADA at under $1. But like I said, if anyone has more up-to-date info on that, feel free to. Yeah, yes, Tom, I can.
Being that this is the first iteration of the challenge category, could you, all the little I don't know what to call them, the subcategories that you have in your screen, like physical products, social media, business solutions, ecosystem integrations. Could you kind of briefly explain what they are and what they actually mean?
Yeah, sure. I was going to get to that in a minute. So, like Tom said, this is the first iteration of the challenge categories idea that I heard that George made a brief presentation of in the main room. So the idea there is to overhaul the entire challenge setting system for the Catalyst process. And in a way, this has been selected by the voters for Fund 9 to be a first iteration of that, and have a sort of category. Even though we're not experimenting with the whole system in its entirety, we're not dividing up the whole Catalyst budget into categories. This challenge in itself is a category composed of multiple areas that we're trying to address. And I think this is the main takeaway that you should have from today's session, is that this is not the classical Dapps and integrations challenge from previous funds. This is a much broader challenge that is trying to cover at least 10 broad areas. Those are outlined in the challenge text on idea scale. So I recommend everyone who is thinking about submitting proposals to this challenge to go over them carefully, because almost surely, if you're thinking about a category that maybe you thought that it's missing in the current Fund 9 of Catalyst, you will probably find it in this challenge, because we have a number of areas where we're looking for proposals. And the ones that are listed here are just a few examples. So there will be a focus on, let's say, more hands-on approach solutions for the Cardano ecosystem as a whole. But these can be very broad ranging. And some of the categories that we're most excited about to bring forward are products related to hardware applications and physical products that may integrate with the blockchain. I'm thinking here either logistics applications or Internet of Things applications that might benefit from tokenization, a tokenization system that can be built on top of Cardano. But there's also numerous others like gaming. The previous Gamers On-Chain challenge has been in a way merged into this broader category. So for everyone who previously had proposals in that category, in that challenge, this will become its new natural home, at least for Fund 9. But we're also looking for DeFi applications. So that was covered in previous funds by dedicated challenges. And one of the ideas behind categorization is to level the playing field, if you will. So to offer a more robust competition behind different areas that could be built on Cardano, but maybe some projects benefited in the past from, or others were hurt by the fact that their particular challenges were a lot more popular than other challenges. So with this first iteration of a category, one of the things that we're trying to experiment with is leveling the playing field and make it more fairer competition for all proposals, and to be presented to voters in a way that is potentially more equitable to proposals and to teams that want to build on Cardano. So as I previously mentioned, there are 10 areas of interest, but we specifically mention in the challenge that besides those main areas that are directly outlined in the challenge, we're also looking for many others. And this could mean literally anything that would benefit, and in turn would also benefit the ecosystem itself. So the project would benefit from the fact that it would be built on Cardano, and also the Cardano ecosystem itself would benefit from your project being built on Cardano. So this is in addition to the categories that have been outlined on the previous slide and that we ourselves have thought of as as examples, but like we said, go into the text of the challenge setting and try to read it with an open mind. Don't assume that this is the previous Dapps and integrations challenge, because it's probably not what you would expect looking at it that way. And you're probably going to find a specific category to, or even if you don't find a specific category directly named, you are more than welcome to submit a proposal for a project that you think would be beneficial to the Cardano ecosystem. So, yeah, preparing for today's slides, we didn't know that George was going to offer a brief overview of the funding categories. So we've kind of wanted to mention those also. I'm going to start by mentioning that you can find relevant links to the work that has been done by George so far into documenting and advocating for the funding categories on the link displayed on the slide. And these are the main focus areas that have been identified through analysis of the catalyst process so far. So maybe take some time to look at them and consider, and maybe come up with your own thoughts about whether or not this would be a superior alternative to the current challenge setting system that we have in place, that over time has showed some weaknesses. It also has some strengths, but I think a lot of us are here to experiment and to build new things, and this would definitely represent a step into a possibly more mature direction for how we think about the kind of problems that we want to address in Project Catalysts overall. So if anyone has any questions about what we presented so far, I think that would be more than welcome at this point, as to not have a very long presentation at the beginning and take questions only at the end. I think it's better if we break up the presentation and the session. So if you have any questions, any thoughts to anything that I have presented so far?
I don't think I have any questions specifically, but I would like to say that I'm on the challenge team, so I welcome everyone to take a minute to read the challenge and understand what it is. Take a look at the categories and see if they make sense to you. If there's something that's that's not on there that could be a category, let's talk to the community and to the challenge team. Bring us the ideas or information. And because of this challenge, the size that it is, I would strongly recommend some collaboration. Right now would be a great time to put some ideas into the insight sharing phase in idea scale. I personally have been kind of anti-category. So they put me on the team to be the bad guy. and everything. So if you have complaints, send them to me, and I'll document them really well. But this is a change. We don't like change too much, but I think it'll be a fun experiment, and I'm really excited about the tokenization of physical products. If you look back at the first town hall, Charles said to show them what we've got, and let's think about feasibility in a different way. Let's think about what we can do and how we can make an impact.
Any other thoughts or questions? I think.
Yeah, I've got one, if I may. Like, those were a bunch of categories. I can add, I could put to, from there, those are the first iterations, but those still blend in onto the other categories. So wallets, SSI, marketplace, business solutions, insurance, legal, like how do we not ding every category? And did you hear the question?
Yeah, I think I heard a question. I'm not entirely sure what you meant, though.
Well, let's say that I want to do insurance for transportation and logistics, Uber, which is a marketplace in itself and a platform. It requires a wallet. That's a business solution. Like, if I take a use case, it'll almost hit every category. This is basically business 101.
Right, but that's the reason why we want to point out that these are only examples of broad areas, and especially if you have a proposal that hits multiple categories, it should be more than welcome in this challenge. So you're not limited to any single one of the pills here. So you can definitely take more than one pill than one of the categories and mix and match them into whatever suits your needs. So this is something that I think even in the previous Dapps and integrations challenge, which had a much more limited scope than this one. Maybe I'm getting some interference. So which had a much more limited scope than this one. I think we've seen that a lot of projects combined multiple applications. These are examples of some of the applications that may be suited for this particular challenge, but they're definitely not a limit on what can be submitted. They're just examples. Like I pointed out, so this is the main takeaway from today's session would be to approach this category, this challenge with an open mind and to think about it in terms of many others. And the fact that if you have an integration or a Dapp that can be built on top of Cardano and which would be relevant for the Cardano ecosystem and also relevant for your application to be built on top of blockchain, then it's more than welcome in this category, even if it's not present in those particular examples that we've mentioned in this slide and in the challenge. And I think this is even before this category, the Dapps and integrations challenge saw a lot of proposals that would fit this description. Some may, even in the past, a lot of them were sometimes questionable if they were true dApps, but still found their place in the Dapps and integrations challenge as they were trying to build on Cardano.
One note maybe on this wording, not being a native speaker on categories, but maybe in this context, as I understood it, the word label is a little bit better, right? Because from my understanding, when I consider the word category, it sounds so exclusive, right? That you have to decide, as the example said, oh, I either go with this category or this category. But when we think about labels, basically I can label my idea with different kinds of labels, right? Which makes it more understandable, at least from my perspective.
Yes, that's definitely a very valid way of looking at it. Matthias, I see you have your hand up, so please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Considering the confusion that was mentioned early in this breakout room, whether we continue to calculate the budget in USD or switch to ADA, how is the challenge team, and especially you, Quasar, thinking about upper limits on budget for any given proposal?
My thought on it is, if you're wanting to come in and ask for the 7.8 million, if you wanted to just be crazy and come in, don't do that. If you want to have a real chance at getting it all, come in at 7.6.
I appreciate the humor, but can you please provide a realistic answer?
Because there's not one. I mean, anybody can come in and ask for 1 million, 2 million, or 3 million. I don't think we're in position to do that for one proposal. And is the challenge team or anyone able to do it for multiple proposals? If you know.
Okay, so does it mean that you won't be using your platform again and talk down proposals that go, to use your words, utilize business 101 and try to see what sticks and actually delivers value to the Cardano ecosystem and let the voters decide? And maybe can you also clarify what you meant earlier in the chat? Let me see what. So you mentioned we can't leave it to voting. Everyone has a huge responsibility. Can't leave it to voting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, this is not a true blue direct democracy. We have delegated reps this time, and also voting is weighted, so people with more ADA have more say. So if we think we're not in an experiment and this is real life, we're mistaken. The votes can be changed and triggered and manipulated, or outcomes can be predicted.
Do you really think that we'll have delegated reps already by the time voting for Fund 9 starts? Because I was in a DREP workshop and it sounded like the workshops will be spanned out over, I don't remember, but I think it was like the next 12 weeks. So I think, seeing how IOG has to like critical functionality and infrastructure, not that I wanted to, but do you really think that we have DREPs?
No, I don't think it really matters if we have DREPs or not. The fact that we're talking about them is already creating additional confusion. So DREPs are having an impact on the experience and the system. People may not know exactly when DREPs will come in, what their impact will be. However, we are still in a direct democracy where people vote directly. The amount of wallets versus the voting weight, analytics coming in on that, there's some interesting things. So yes, you cannot leave it all to the voters. And in my idea of governance, it's not about voting. It's about what you do. It's about a collection of systems and all of the rules and integrations, human and non-human actors.
Okay, so you're excluding newcomers to the system then, because they haven't done anything yet and they're trying to get a start. I mean, maybe it's off topic, but
yeah, I was just going to say that while this conversation is definitely worth having, probably it's getting to be a bit off topic for today's session. So,
well, I mean, if a challenge team member says that we can't leave it up to the voting, but this is the current system, and I mean, the previous fund, what we saw in the funds prior, that really voting followed the CA VCA process, which now are finally called proposals, assessors or whatever. That hasn't happened. So I think it is actually kind of on topic, because as a challenge team member,
well,
you are subscribing to the existing system. So I really want to understand what you mean by can't leave it up to the voting.
Matthias,
Quasar is so sorry, Quasar, but I'm just going to say that you're right. Quasar is a challenge team member, and every challenge team member is entitled to his opinions, but I think you're overplaying a bit the importance of the challenge team. So I want to make it perfectly clear to people who maybe are new to Catalyst that the challenge teams itself have absolutely no influence over the outcome of the votes and of the proposals that get selected to be implemented. So the role of the challenge team is one of supporting the proposals and encouraging them to collaborate where it makes sense, as Quasar said earlier. And after that, help with the onboarding process. We don't have any sway or influence on the votes or any control of the voting process. So that is not something that the challenge teams do. And that's why while individual members of the challenge teams will definitely have their own personal opinions, I don't think that's necessarily valid to the discussion about the challenge overall or to the proposals that will be submitted and eventually selected by ADA holders. So I see where you're coming from, Matthias, but I think this is a discussion more between 2 points of view. I don't want to say you and Quasar because there may be people behind the specific points of view, but I don't see at this point how it's entirely relevant to today's session. And we can definitely get to it at the end of the session. I would like to come back to your initial question, if that's okay, Matthias, to address if we as a challenge team would prefer to have upper limits on proposals. And the simple answer is no. And no, because of the fact that one of the main reasons why we wanted to experiment with this category, and particularly why we kind of took the initial weighting of this category as proposed by George in the challenge setting, and felt that it should be voted on by the community, is because that we want to signal to the Catalyst community overall that with this challenge, there is room for larger projects that may be looking at Cardano or looking to develop or port their existing applications, complex applications, big applications that may require large teams to port or to develop on Cardano, that there's now room to get at least a portion of their funding through Project Catalyst. And as with everything related to Catalyst, this in itself is an experiment, and we're curious and we want to see where that may lead and what kind of projects we can attract to Cardano through Catalyst, and in this way, with this larger amount in play for Fund 9, and with this stated goal of the challenge of attracting larger projects and signaling that there's room for larger projects. Now, this in no way mean that smaller projects don't have a room in this category, but I'm guessing it's a simple mathematical addition to see that if you want to develop a project on Cardano that may involve costs larger than previous dApps and integrations challenge, you are not going to be able to or maybe you won't consider coming to Catalyst for help, and that could lead to a dismissal of the entire Cardano or Catalyst ecosystem, things that we have seen in the past. So certain actors in the wider Cardano community dismissing Catalyst because of the way the challenges were structured and the pie was divided into so many thin slices that in some cases perhaps it didn't make sense to approach Catalyst for certain projects as a viable source of funding. So, and this has to do with the last point I noted here on this slide, to restore some of the trust that in certain corners of the Cardano community has been lost in the Catalyst process, that maybe some people have a less than favorable idea with Catalyst, and to signal that ultimately at the end of the day, Catalyst is the governance layer, at least for now, for the Cardano treasury, but hopefully going forward, it will lead to an evolution towards a governance layer for the whole Cardano protocol. And we definitely can't afford to exclude large segments of the Cardano community this early on in this process, and to have them not wanting to participate in the governance of Cardano. Yes, Curtis, please go ahead. You had your hand up for sometimes. I wasn't trying to ignore you, but then you lowered your hand, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk or not.
I just wasn't sure if we were changing topics, but because it's similar to Matthias's question, where we've seen in this past funding that whales can really win or capitalize on a challenge category. There have been, I think many of the winners, of proposal winners, were very minimal number of wallets with just large amounts of ADA. So we've seen it in the past, and my question was more, what is preventing them from essentially applying for all the different labels or categories, and just trying to bring their whales to vote in and winning every single one of them. I mean, if they won one, there's nothing stopping them from winning all the challenge settings. And I agree that if you're asking for a large amount of money, we shouldn't stop that. But at the same time, they can play the system. It is, in a sense, gamification, and bring the more people, the more voters, the bigger whales, and you kind of just win. So how is that being addressed?
If I can provide a little answer, that's precisely what I meant by can't leave it to the voters. That includes all voters, including whales and including those wallets with 500. We're also leaving out people with less than 500. They're not voters, but they are holding ADA. They are holding the governance token. So Catalyst is an experiment, and it's designed to be a series of governance iterations. So that's what I meant by can't leave it to the voters.
So we just got a pop-up informing us that the breakout room will close in 45 seconds. So I guess that's the organizer's signal that we should probably wrap it up, even though I was going to answer your question, Curtis. So the main thing to keep in mind, I guess, here is that the voter participation in Catalyst overall is very small. So even though the results from previous funds may have been informative to a certain extent, what I think we should all strive for is to attract a larger number of the Cardano community overall to vote in.
No, we forgot.
Why?
No, we forgot to mention it. Co-hosts.
Whoa.
If you leave the room, you can leave your room,
Oh,
or
Press
you
that
can
button.
Don't
go
press
on.
the red button.
Exactly.
oh,
No, Kaiser, it couldn't have been you. You don't have
no,
a co-host.
that's
I'd
what we
never give
call
you
a
co-host.
time warp. It's a time warp. Like you just got warped. Teleporting is real. We did it. We did it.
All right, but let's reopen the rooms again. Give me a second. Oh, shit. What to call it? We had 3 ones. Dapps, products and integrations. But who closed the room? Why did you close the room? Don't close rooms.
Oh, I did, and I apologize, everyone. That was
No.
my fault.
No, Kaiser, you're not even able to because I never assign you as co-host. I know how
Oh.
dangerous it is.
Okay. Well, hey, blame Quasar anyway. That's the motto.
No, I can avoid blaming you by not giving you co-host. No, but I think maybe somebody just pushed the wrong button. But yeah, co-hosts at general. If you leave your room, it normally asks you 2 questions: leave your room or close all rooms. And if you're not aware of it, you just click the wrong thing and all the rooms close.
Well, in our room, we received a pop-up notification informing us that the room will automatically close, and we didn't do anything, and the room closed by itself. So, and it dragged us out of the room.
No, look, because Andrea and Miroslav, the legal and financial implementations, they are not here anymore. Looked like they're finished their room and they closed up there. So might be there. But however, things may break. We know it. We proved it since 1.5 years already. So, and with this, yes, the rooms are reopened. So feel free to jump back. Sorry for the disruption.
It confirms the conversation about leaving it to the voters. Can't leave it to Zoom or voters or people. You got to be active.
So welcome back, everyone.
Maybe we should wait a couple more seconds for everyone interested to rejoin.
Talk about timing. Like I left the computer and jumped over on my phone. Well, because you said the 45 seconds window popped up, so it certainly wasn't me. I'm confirming I'm validating it with myself. I did not cause that.
You're too hard on yourself, Quasar. So I think now everyone has joined. So going back to Curtis's question and observation. So like I said, while we definitely can take away a lot of data from previous funds, I think it's also important to remember that we're still in the very early stages of Project Catalyst, and more than that, the voter participation is very low still. I think less than 10% of total ADA has voted in Fund 8. And if more Cardano holders do decide to show up and take part in the catalyst process, the impact of the whales could be diminished, or it could grow even stronger than it is now. But I think by looking at the results for Fund 8 in particular, they show that the whales might have had an impact, but more importantly, I think they show that voices who are known in the Cardano community overall, not necessarily in the Catalyst community, which is probably a more isolated of the Cardano communities. And so voices that are known in the Cardano community overall have had a sway on voters, and whales included. So while the impact of whales is certainly one of the things that we have to take into account, we also have to remember that the so-called whales, i.e. people with large ADA holdings, have the most interest for Cardano to succeed and would have the most to lose if Cardano would find itself in a precarious position or an uncompetitive position. So whales are by definition motivated by their large ADA holdings to have the incentive to look after and to steward the catalyst process. And if they are so short-sighted as to go for a quick 100,000 or 200,000 reward here, that could jeopardize his entire holdings that may be in the millions of ADA. So I think that also deserves some consideration. Yes, Sebastian.
Hi everyone. I'm so agree with you about the common purpose of all of the members of Cardano as ecosystem. All we have the intention of see grow the ecosystem. And in other ways, you as a proposer, you can do anything about it. You can do anything to control that variable of the equation. All you can do is focus on present a good proposal and make the best job you can do and present it. No more else. The rest is a question of, in this moment, whales. In another moment will be, I don't know, the fluctuation of the token. In other way will be a political reasons or social reasons or many other variables. And the proposer is off of that variable. That the proposer don't have the control of that variable, so it doesn't care at the end. Thanks.
Curtis, please go ahead. I see you have your hand raised again.
Yeah, sorry, I was just wanted to respond to what you said. I do agree with everything that you have said, and Sebastian, and I think ideally that's the goal, right? We grow large enough to where these whales have less impact. But it seems, at least for one or two projects that I've observed, the whales are potential VC backers for some of these projects. So I kind of see a conflict of interest, right? They are the funding VC backer to a project, and then that project proposed for that project to get additional funding to help, to help it along. And of course, that shouldn't be disallowed, but it is a bit of an unfair advantage. And not to say that we need to, solve this now, but I don't think the power to weight ratio for whales is going to decrease enough to make it fair anytime soon, at least in my opinion.
Well, that also depends on what you consider fair, because ultimately the people with large ADA holdings, it's fair for them to have a larger voice because they took on a large financial risk in perhaps 2017 or perhaps earlier to invest in ADA. And we wouldn't be here without their commitment to the protocol. So we have to take that view on fairness also, not only focus on the view of what's fair to us as proposers, right? So fairness is always like beauty, probably in the eye of the beholder. So
Absolutely agree. I do agree with that. It's more, it's the small person, right? The person who doesn't have a big whale backing them. We get into the zone of where they have no chance, you know, when they're competing against the rest. So I do agree, you know, right? Whales are fair, but when it's designed such that only whales win is kind of the concern here. But yes, due for some change, maybe.
yeah, that's definitely a valid concern. If the system gets to a point where it's 100% gamed by certain actors and certain players, and there's definitely multiple conversations to be had there and multiple approaches that could solve such problems in the future. And I think it's up to us, particularly as Catalyst community members and as people who have dedicated ourselves to this part of the whole ecosystem, which is governance, to figure out collectively what are the best approaches. Not only to figure them out, but also present them in a meaningful way to the rest of the Cardano ecosystem, right? Because it doesn't ultimately, and at the end of the day, it won't make much of a difference if we come up with a perfectly viable alternative to the current voting system. Let's say if we don't manage to convince the general ADA holder, so to speak, to accept those changes, which will definitely influence some of the players in the ecosystem a lot more than others, particularly if we're looking at minimizing the current voting ratio, which is 1 ADA, 1 vote, basically. Quasar, you're being awfully polite.
Thank you. Is this a great challenge or a good challenge to propose alternative governance and voting platforms and solutions? I know that, you know, the governance, nation building or national governance is one of the categories. So I hope to see some proposals that are addressing that are voting related.
Yeah, and when it comes to integrations, I think one of the categories or the areas that could be covered by this challenge would be tools or systems that would specifically focus on Catalyst governance itself. So possibly a viable alternative to IdeaScale, for example, because I know that has been an idea that has been floating around in the Catalyst community for a very, very long time. Decentralized alternative to IdeaScale, and that's a product or integration that would definitely require both collaboration from a number of actors within the Catalyst and Cardano community, but also a larger funding to get accomplished. You can't realistically take on the journey of building a viable alternative, a decentralized alternative to IdeaScale with, let's say, only a couple of 100,000 in funding, because that's definitely going to be a very large project with multiple parties involved, and especially if we're looking to create an environment of fair compensation stemming from Catalyst, because there's ultimately, and at the end of the day, this is also an experiment into Catalyst is also an experiment into how we can we redefine this traditional employee-employer relationship that has come to dominate human society, I would say, in the last century. So
thank you for bringing that up, the employee-employer relationship and that expectation of benefits and what's fair. Like, that's a huge national, if not global, problem that we all can solve together, or at least look at.
Yeah. Coming back to that point of compensation and of proposal budgets, I think one of the thoughts we had when allocating a bigger budget to this proposal was to this challenge, sorry, was to eliminate the bias that we have observed throughout Catalyst funds of, I guess now it's proposal reviews, but yeah, that's of CAs, proposal assessors currently into how they would look upon proposals, and maybe a bias that they definitely weren't necessarily negatively bringing to the table, was to look at a proposal in terms of how much of the challenge setting budget overall is requested by that proposal. And that is, in a certain regard, definitely a valid approach to take, but we estimated that it has taken up a disproportionately large amount of how a challenge can be perceived by the community, to the point where the current community-built tools for tracking Catalyst, which are great community tools, have this feature inbuilt to display next to each proposal the challenge, the total of the challenge budget that that particular proposal is requesting. And the thought behind having a larger challenge, a larger budget challenge, was to alleviate and to perhaps move away a bit from that possible bias that has been built in CAs and the way they look at proposals. And personally, our suspicion was that that particular bias came from a very good point where CAs were trying to achieve a sort of fairness, but that bias ultimately could lead to proposals that maybe were requesting larger amounts of the total budget that may have been more impactful to the ecosystem overall, being dismissed simply because of that. So I know some of you are Catalyst veterans, and I think we would like to hear your thoughts on this and on the challenge setting overall and its budget, because like Ana Maria said in the beginning of this presentation, we don't want it to be the large elephant in the room that no one is addressing and no one is giving thought about. Because if we gloss over what this experiment represents, we may walk away from it back to the older system without properly considering its results. And its teachings ultimately.
I think there are some risks, obviously, which people kind of are seeing and which people fear. But actually, it's also giving some visibility now, which we might have masked otherwise because the challenges in itself didn't have the volume. It can go awfully wrong, or it can demonstrate that actually kind of things don't break, and that would even give us a pathway going forward. I mean, there is a cut now effectively from IOG on it. And if it wouldn't have been the case, we would have seen challenges in itself in the same dimension. So kind of like from that perspective, it's one or the other. And from that perspective, I think in hindsight, we will all know what can go wrong or what doesn't go wrong. That doesn't give us an assurance, but I think in itself, it takes a constraint away, which we had before. And in the sense of an experiment, we should know what is going to happen in this context. And then you can react perhaps in the next funding round and say, okay, we have to do something about it because this one really badly wrong. Or we say it worked out perfectly. We should have done that earlier. So I mean, it's a little bit opening up the extreme, but it also gives us the ability kind of to learn in a circumstance which we didn't have before.
Yes, as the point that you brought up, Nori, is very pertinent to the discussion, and that's another aspect which we'll definitely need to consider. So, for those of you who may have not read Nori's comments, he wrote that a problem that might emerge will be having enough CAs to properly evaluate proposals. And as a result, it might be prudent to go on CA recruitment push coming from the entire Catalyst community. Hopefully that will be alleviated a bit by the visibility and the excellent work that Danny has done to showcase that being a CA in Project Catalyst can be a viable even career choice for some, given that the most dedicated CAs have received substantial rewards. I think the highest reward in Fund 8 was of $55,000, which almost turned that particular CA into a whale, going back to our previous discussion, or at least a small fish, a smaller, bigger fish.
A dolphin.
Yeah, a dolphin. Dolphin's not a fish, but anyway, a smaller whale.
Yeah.
A smaller marine mammal. So possibly that concern, that very valid concern that Nori has brought up, will be at least in part alleviated, keeping a lookout on the CA Telegram in this last few days. I've seen that there's been quite a few people joining recently, and maybe as we move closer to the CA stage, we'll see even more people joining. But well, yeah, Peter, of course, a whale isn't a fish either. So Jeremiah, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, you have your hand up, so please go ahead.
Yeah, talking about the CAs and the evaluation, can you elaborate real quick on how that matters when it comes to the voting? Or is it just kind of an indication for voters to see if it's a good or bad proposal?
Well, actually, that was the initial, at least the way we saw it, was the idea behind the title of CA, right? It's a person who advises the larger community of Cardano holders into what constitutes a good proposal, in their view, a beneficial and impactful proposal for the Cardano ecosystem. They don't directly influence the vote in any way, but they do guide, their assessments do guide the voters, or can guide the voters, I might say. So in certain instances, we've probably seen, especially in this last fund, that with some people, that some actors that may have had a larger visibility in the Cardano ecosystem, the assessments and the grades given by the CAs were not as impactful, but I would say overall they still constitute a very good predictor of outcomes, especially for proposals that are not necessarily submitted by known entities or known personas in the Cardano ecosystem. And I think that that represents the majority of proposals actually in Catalyst. So they don't have, to answer your question, they don't have any direct influence. That will be a role that in the future will hopefully be played by the DREPs as a way to gather and to concentrate voting power in Catalyst directly. But as it stands now, CAs don't have any direct control over the outcome. I hope I answered your question.
Yes. Thank you very much. And I mean, I did not analyze the assessments given by in the last fund by the CAs, but when I just looked through those the fund 8, the results, right? I think I would establish the mean of the assessments by the CAs. They were like in the 3 point something, right? So most of the proposals get a very, very high score if the highest score is 4.0, right? Is that correct?
Well, there is a mean. In the voting app, each proposal has its average CA rating displayed next to it. So that's already happening. And getting a big score from one CA does not necessarily guarantee that the proposal itself will be overall highly rated. And,
right, but the mean, I think when they show the results of all the applications, for me it seemed they were very close. Most applications got a very high evaluation, quite in the 3 point somethings, or maybe I'm mistaken.
No, that's not necessarily true for all or challenges. There certainly were proposals that received scores lower than 2 as a mean from CAs, and those were on the ballot. So, but depending on which category or which challenge you were looking at, that may have been the case. So certainly some categories may have had only proposals that averaged out above 3. I don't know. I haven't, honestly, we haven't looked at the data from that angle.
No.
But you may be right for some categories, but others definitely had scores below 2 and definitely below 3. There were multiple instances of proposals below 3, and some even below 2. But I think you're right in the observation that most proposals ended up receiving a mean above 3. So we're approaching the 90-minute mark. So
one more question. As being new to the Catalyst, what kind of platforms is there once you propose your idea to talk to spread the idea, to talk to other people, to connect? Is there like specific Discords for this, or are people just approaching you once you put it out on idea scale and then they write you, or what kind of platforms are there out to get to some stakeholders, like maybe also those important whales, right?
Definitely a very valid question for all proposals. Well, I think that ultimately depends on how much you're willing to put yourself out there, right? And your project. In terms of the Catalyst community, I would say go for Discord and Telegram for the Catalyst this Discord server and the various Telegram groups that have formed. But to be really effective in reaching a wider Cardano community, I think Twitter would be your go-to place. And depending on how much you're willing to put yourself and your project out there, you could engage the community with in conversations and try to offer meaningful contributions to those conversations and try to find a way where your project might fit in that conversation, maybe even try to present it in video form, possibly try to reach out to prominent Cardano specific YouTubers if you're comfortable with going on YouTube shows and taking interviews. I'm sure if you have a potential impactful challenge, you'll find that a number of even the largest YouTubers will be welcome to speak to you about your idea. It may require some persistence on your part, as I'm sure you're aware that people can be very busy, so persistence will probably be your best tool in this in this quest of getting your proposal out there in front of voters. And probably for the larger Cardano community, Twitter is the best platform to approach talking about your proposal and trying to explain why it would be impactful to the Cardano ecosystem. I think if you phrase it in those terms, people will be very receptive to you and your project. Well, just looking at your comment, Matthias, yes, definitely Twitter can be a space for negative outlooks and negative views, but from what we've seen, especially of the Cardano community in general, it tends to be a lot more positive than other crypto communities, let's say. So, and they're also willing to listen if you prove yourself to be an engaging actor, and if you prove yourself to have the best interest of Cardano at heart, because I think ultimately we come from very different backgrounds. All of us were binded by our desire to see the success of this experiment that we, each of us in our own way, has probably perceived to be as a meaningful and honest take on what crypto could become in the future, as opposed to other platforms that may have made us a lot richer, a lot faster, but we chose to possibly, I don't want to speak for everyone, obviously, but I'm assuming that's one of the reasons why we chose to engage and to build on Cardano. So we'll gladly take any more questions from, and try to be as helpful as possible, or even leave room for an open discussion amongst the participants here. But if not, if there aren't any more, like I said, we're approaching the 19-minute mark, and I think it's been very good to have you present in today's session and to hear your thoughts and valid concerns about this experiment ultimately. And hope to see engaging proposals and projects from all of you present here as applications in Fund 9 for Catalyst. So I think we're almost the last people in the overall Zoom meeting. I was about to say that we could join the main room, but I don't think there is a main room at this point. So
No.
if you don't have any other questions.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure talking to you today, and
see you around Catalyst.
Maybe see you at Town Hall.
Yeah, unfortunately, the town halls, at least for us personally, are a bit late now because we kind of changed time zones and are late in the day, and we could take part maybe in the main town hall session, but we wouldn't be able to participate in the after town hall sessions, and that's why we haven't been very active recently, but we're changing time zones again, and we might be more active going forward.
Nice. That's good to see you here. Thanks for facilitating.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Nori.
Yeah.
All right. See you both.
See you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for facilitating, Marie. It's good. See ya.
Thank you, Peter.
Bye, Peter.
Bye, Peter. No.